What does it mean to live on a world that has already died, yet refuses to stop breathing? That question echoes through the smoke-choked cathedrals of Holy Terra, the ancient trembling heart of mankind. The people here no longer ask where the Emperor is. They no longer question what he was. They only whisper to the bones of their city and pray the sky does not collapse upon them. Because Earth, Terra, is not a planet. It is a shrine built upon the corpse of a world. From orbit, it no longer looks blue. The oceans are gone, replaced by a crust of metal, ash, and the charred remnants of forgotten empires. Entire continents have been devoured by cityscape, towering spires, Gothic arches and fortresses that rise into the clouds, layered upon the ruins of millennia. Terra is a monument of devotion and decay, wrapped in the silence of billions who labor, worship, and die without ever seeing the sun. There is no sky here. Only the eternal pall of industry, thick clouds of incense, smoke, and reactor smog that blot out the heavens. The air itself feels like prayer, heavy, suffocating, and holy. Every breath taken on Terra is an act of worship, every moment of survival, a liturgy of pain. Those who live here do not call it Earth, they call it the Throne World. To speak its old name is almost heretical, an echo of the Dark Age when man thought himself the master of stars. Now man kneels beneath his own creation, crushed by the weight of faith and bureaucracy. Billions live and die in the shadow of the Imperial Palace, a structure so vast it can be seen from orbit, its walls spreading for thousands of miles, built over mountains, oceans, and time itself. No one knows how deep it goes. Some say the lowest levels still contain the bones of the Himalayan mountains, entombed beneath cathedrals and data vaults that have been sealed for 10,000 years. The people closest to the palace live in perpetual awe. They never see the Emperor, only the light that burns from his golden throne. It is said that this radiance never fades, that it casts no shadow. But those who work near its sanctums know the truth. The light flickers, it trembles, and in those moments of dimness, the entire planet seems to hold its breath. To live on Terra is to live under watchful eyes. Every street corner bears a statue of a saint or martyr, their faces eroded by centuries of ash and prayer. The walls are covered with parchment, holy edicts, purity seals, and blessings written by hands that have long since turned to dust. Servo skulls drift through the air, whispering scripture in mechanical tones. And high above, the administratum towers, endless stacks of offices and archive vaults where scribes labor to record the lives and deaths of every soul born under the Emperor's light. Some of these scribes never see the outside world. They are born within data halls, live surrounded by parchment and cogitators, and die at their desks, their bones ground into dust to make ink for new records. Their lives are not wasted. They are offered. The people of Terra do not seek comfort, they seek purpose. Suffering is sacred, labor is devotion. To weep is to honor the Emperor's endurance upon his throne. But beneath the surface, beneath the chanting and incense, there are whispers. They say the lower levels of Terra stretch into darkness deeper than any starless void. Caverns filled with the bones of ancient machines. Forgotten catacombs where the air still hums with the pulse of pre-imperial technology. Down there, the light of the Imperium fades, and faith alone cannot pierce the black. The people who live in those depths are not recorded. They are the lost, descendants of forgotten workers, criminals, and outcasts sealed away generations ago. Their skin has turned pale, their lungs are black from the rot of recycled air. Some say they still pray, though not to the Emperor. Others say they have begun to change. Even the Adeptus Arbites do not patrol that deep. The Ecclesiarchy denies their existence. But the whispers persist, carried upward through the vents and maintenance shafts. The higher dwellers call them the subhumans, or the forgotten. Yet there are rumors, terrible rumors, that sometimes in the quiet of the night, one of them crawls up from the dark, clutching something that glows with forbidden light. Above, the life of the faithful continues. Pilgrims arrive from across the galaxy, their bodies bent and scarred from years of travel through warp storms and Xenos infestations, all to set foot upon the soil of the throne world. Most never reach the palace gates. The crowds stretch for miles, packed shoulder to shoulder in ceaseless prayer. The air trembles with hymns and chants, rising like smoke toward the heavens that no longer exist. There are no seasons here, no day or night, only the unending rhythm of devotion. Bells toll constantly, marking shifts, deaths, births, and ritual sacrifices to maintain the life support systems of the palace. When the bells ring in the higher hives, people kneel. When they ring in the lower levels, people hide. Because sometimes, when the bells toll in the deep, they are not rung by human hands. To live on Terra is to live in the shadow of eternity. But eternity decays. The throne requires more than faith. It consumes. Every day, thousands of psychers are brought before the golden throne, souls with the spark of the warp burning in their minds. They are not saints, they are fuel. Their bodies are drained to keep the Astronomicon, the Emperor's light, burning across the galaxy. Without them, the Imperium would be blind, adrift in madness. Their screams echo through the palace walls. The faithful call it music. But some confess that if you listen closely, you can hear the sorrow in those cries, something almost human. In the upper hives, nobles feast upon rationed luxuries, drinking recycled water filtered through gold and incense. Their windows are reinforced with stained glass depicting the Emperor's miracles. Their servants wear masks to hide their faces so as not to offend with the sin of individuality. In the lower hives, the poor eat what the nobles discard. Some resort to the bodies of the dead, consecrated in holy ash to make the act ritually pure. Yet both noble and pauper dream of the same thing, to see the Emperor, to glimpse the throne, to feel, even for a moment, the divine radiance that sustains mankind. But the gates to the Sanctum Imperialis have been closed for millennia. Even the High Lords cannot enter freely. They say the Golden Throne hums louder now, that its machine spirits groan beneath the weight of eternity. The tech priests of Mars send their finest, but even they return in silence, their faces pale, their voices hollow. They say the Emperor does not speak anymore, and still the people pray, because if he is silent, it must be for a reason. Because if the light flickers, it is only to test their faith. Because to doubt, even for a heartbeat, is to invite damnation. There is no rebellion on Terra, only despair, disguised as reverence. Yet sometimes, a strange wind moves through the hive corridors, a current of air that smells not of incense, but of salt. Some claim to have seen it, a shimmer of blue light in the dark, a glimpse of what once was, an ocean, a forest, a sky full of stars. They call it a heresy of memory, but the oldest among the scribes say it is the earth remembering itself. That somewhere deep beneath the palace, beneath the layers of devotion and ash, the planet still dreams of what it used to be. And that dream is dangerous, because if Earth remembers, then humanity might too. And the Imperium cannot allow that. Recently, deep within the palace's forgotten sublevels, an excavation team uncovered something. An ancient vault sealed before the Unification Wars. Its walls were carved with symbols older than the Imperium, words in a language long forbidden. The tech priests claimed it was nothing, a relic from the Dark Age. But the scribes who catalogued its contents never returned. The chamber has since been sealed again. The official record was erased, but in the alleys and archives, a rumor spreads like wildfire, that beneath the Golden Throne lies something the Emperor sought to bury forever. A truth too dangerous for faith. A secret that, if spoken, could make even the stars weep. And tonight, as the bells toll across the throne world, the light of the Astronomicon flickers once more. Just for a breath, just for a heartbeat. For the first time in 10,000 years, Terra shudders, and in the silence that follows, something beneath the palace begins to awaken. The tremor that shook Terra was not an earthquake. It was the sound of faith cracking. For a moment, the entire throne world held its breath. The incense burners swayed. The endless chant of the ecclesiarchy faltered. Even the servo skulls paused mid-flight, as if the machine spirits themselves feared what they had felt. And then silence, so vast it swallowed the prayers of billions. In the deepest vaults beneath the imperial palace, seismic alarms screamed. Vox channels filled with static and half-sentences. Magos engineers recited Binharic hymns to calm the data spirits, but the readouts were wrong. Numbers that should not exist, readings from beneath the throne itself. Something ancient had stirred, and the machines did not understand it. Above, in the Cathedral of the Emperor's Light, the Confessor General of Terra fell to his knees. He could not explain why, but he felt it in his bones, a pulse like a heartbeat too immense to belong to any living thing. He pressed his forehead to the marble floor and whispered through trembling lips, "My Emperor, is that you?" The candles around him flickered, and the smoke curled into patterns that almost resembled a human face. Almost. At the same moment, in the upper hives, the Imperial Guard garrison received orders to seal all transit routes leading to the lower levels. The troopers obeyed without question. They were veterans of 1,000 worlds, but none had ever seen Terra itself. Now, their boots echoed in the ancient corridors of the throne world, weapons ready, eyes wide. The air reeked of oil and holiness. Some whispered that this was not a deployment. It was a containment. Sergeant Calthis led his squad through a maintenance tunnel lined with purity seals so thick they looked like flayed skin. His auspex flickered, showing motion ahead, then cutting out completely. One of his men made the sign of the Aquila. Calthis didn't rebuke him. He wanted to do the same. They reached the entrance to sub-level 990 deep. The gate was marked with the sigil of the Custodies. That alone should have stopped them. But the order had come from the High Lords. The Emperor's will, they said. So they broke the seal. Though they broke, the gate hissed open. A gust of warm, wet air rolled out, air that smelled of earth, not metal. For a second, they could almost imagine a forest. In the hall of Vox Benedictions, Astropath Lyran screamed. Her eyes bled, her mind alight with visions no mortal could contain. She saw the Astronomicon flicker again, not just dim, but bend, as though something immense had brushed against its psychic field. Through her agony, she whispered a single word before collapsing into silence. Awakening. The Adeptus Custodes were not idle. Within minutes, their golden forms moved through the palace like living statues, silent and precise. They had not drawn blades on Terra in 10,000 years. Now they did. Every sound of their armor was a hymn, every step a warning. They moved toward the vaults beneath the throne, not to explore, but to ensure nothing came out. In the Spire of Judicants, the High Lords convened in emergency session. Their voices rose like vultures circling a corpse. A seismic event. No cause determined. Machine error. But none of them believed that. They all remembered the ancient oaths. If the throne stirs, so too does the end. Lord Guilliman's emissary was present, a silent figure in cobalt armor. He said nothing, only watched. When the others demanded answers from Mars, the emissary finally spoke. "The throne is failing," he said, "and something beneath it is waking." The room froze. The Minister of Faith crossed himself and whispered, "Blasphemy." But the emissary continued, "If that thing beneath the palace was sealed by the Emperor himself, it was not meant to ever awaken. And now, it stirs because the Emperor's light no longer binds it. In the lower depths, Calthus and his squad descended further than any mortal should. The walls grew damp, the light dim. They found structures not built by human hands, smooth metal black as void glass, humming faintly with power. Their auspex read impossible energy levels. Private Tovin touched the surface. It was warm. When he pulled his hand away, words had appeared where his skin met the metal, tiny runes that burned with faint golden light. He screamed and fired his laser gun at the wall. The beam vanished into the dark, swallowed whole. "Fall back," Calthus ordered, but behind them, the gate sealed shut. The vox crackled with a single phrase, a voice neither human nor machine. "You were not meant to see." Above, the ecclesiarch addressed the people of Terra from the Grand Basilica. His voice boomed across the hives through countless vox speakers. "Children of the Emperor, do not fear the trembling of the earth. It is the throne rejoicing. The Emperor's spirit moves again." The crowd fell to their knees, weeping in joy. But behind the basilica, inquisitors watched from shadowed balconies, exchanging silent, grim looks. They knew a lie when they heard one. In the Schola Progenium dormitories, young cadets knelt before their instructors, reciting prayers of loyalty. Yet one boy, a scribe's son, raised his hand. "Instructor," he asked, voice trembling, "if the Emperor truly moves again, does that mean he was ever still?" The instructor struck him, hard enough to draw blood. There was never a moment when he was not. But in her eyes, doubt flickered. Back in the vaults, Calthus's squad pressed deeper. Their lights fell upon a mural, a depiction of the Emperor but not as they knew him. This was not the stern, golden god of the ecclesiarchy. This was a man, tired, wounded, his eyes filled with sorrow. Beneath his feet were broken chains. At his side, a symbol they did not recognize, a serpent eating its own tail. Private Tovin fell to his knees, weeping uncontrollably. "He was not our god," he sobbed. "He was our prisoner." The Vox operator tried to transmit the image, but interference filled the air. Then a voice cut through the static, a whisper that felt ancient, endless. "Remember what was lost." In orbit above Terra, aboard the Vigilant Oath, the Battle Fleet Command detected a power surge beneath the palace. It was small, localized, but its energy signature matched that of a warp breach. The Admiral ordered a communication blackout, invoking Emergency Protocol Omega Custodia. No word was to leave the system, not even to Mars. The Mechanicus protested, the Fabricator General demanded access, but the Custodes themselves came to enforce silence. Their presence ended all debate. The Emperor's will required secrecy. Meanwhile, in the depths, Calthus's Vox finally cleared, just long enough for a single image to transmit. It reached the upper data halls, where a lowly scribe named Amara received it. She opened the file and froze. The image was impossible. It showed the Golden Throne, not as it was now, but as it had been once, connected to vast machinery, surrounded by 12 figures cloaked in light. And beneath it, the same serpent symbol. Then the file erased itself. That night, Amara could not sleep. She felt something whispering in her mind, not words, but memories, of oceans, of blue skies, of laughter, things she had never seen. She wept quietly, realizing that they were not dreams. They were history. In the ecclesiarch's private chamber, the confessor heard a knock. A custodian entered, taller than any mortal, his armor gleaming like sunlight through blood. He spoke softly. "You will prepare the people for what comes next." The confessor swallowed hard. "And what is next?" The custodian's visor tilted down toward him. Revelation. In the underhive, tremors grew stronger. Whole sectors collapsed into sinkholes, revealing tunnels that glowed faintly with inner light. The Forgotten Ones emerged, pale figures chanting in a language no longer known. Their eyes were blind, yet they moved with purpose, carrying relics of glass and metal. One relic reached the surface. It was small, a fragment of something once vast. A pilgrim picked it up, thinking it holy. The moment she touched it, she saw visions of stars being born, of humanity spreading across galaxies before the Imperium ever was. And then she saw the Emperor, not as God, but as guardian, standing between mankind and something dark beyond the veil. She screamed until her throat tore. The relic crumbled into dust. Across the palace, the Astronomicon dimmed once more. For 3 minutes the galaxy was blind. Astropaths collapsed by the thousands. The light returned, but it was different. Colder, sharper, almost conscious. In the throne room, the custodes fell to one knee as alarms blared. The Emperor's chamber doors trembled. For the first time in 10 millennia, the golden seals cracked. From within came a sound that was not human, a whisper that filled every mind on Terra, spoken in a language older than stars. "Why have you chained me?" The custodes did not answer. They could not. The sound itself broke them. In the High Lord's chamber, panic erupted. Some demanded excommunication of half the palace staff. Others called for orbital bombardment of the lower vaults. But the emissary from Guilliman stood still, eyes closed. "We have kept the truth buried for too long," he murmured. "And now, the throne remembers." In the streets, people fell to the ground as the statues of saints cracked open, revealing hollow interiors filled with machinery and bone. The bells rang without hands. Vox channels repeated a single phrase across all frequencies. "The earth remembers." Calthus never returned from the depths, but a recording from his helmet was found days later, corrupted by static. In it, his voice whispered, "We found the heart, it's still beating." And then silence. In the palace above, the light of the golden throne flared once, so bright it blinded everyone who looked upon it. For that single moment, every soul on Terra heard a voice in their mind, neither wrathful nor divine, but human. "I am not your God." Then the light vanished. The Astronomicon died. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the stars went dark. Darkness fell across the throne world like a shroud. The Astronomicon's death echoed through the void, an unholy silence that reached every corner of the Imperium. Ships adrift in the warp were lost without its guiding light. Whole fleets screamed into madness. Across 1,000,000 worlds, astropaths collapsed, their minds burned by psychic backlash. For the first time in 10,000 years, humanity was blind. On Terra, the silence broke faith itself. The bells did not ring, the hymns ceased, the incense fires died. Even the sky, eternally clouded by the breath of industry, hung still, as if the world feared to exhale. Those who looked toward the palace saw the impossible. The light from the golden throne had gone out. In the Basilica of Unending Prayer, a single candle burned in the darkness. Confessor General Malkarian knelt before it, whispering psalms through bleeding lips. His voice trembled. "He tests us. He must." But in his heart, he felt only emptiness. For the first time in his life, when he prayed, nothing answered. Far above, in orbit, the vigilant oath drifted in chaos. Without the Astronomicon, navigation was suicide. Communications failed. Discipline faltered. Admiral Serac stood before the viewport, watching the black planet below. "If the light is gone," she said softly, "what keeps them believing?" Her first officer, once a man of unshakable faith, gave no answer. He simply removed his Aquila pendant and placed it on the floor. Beneath the palace, the vaults still throbbed with faint energy. The custodes had sealed the lower levels, but their numbers dwindled. Some vanished without trace. Others turned their blades upon themselves, whispering words no mortal tongue should know. The surviving Magos attempted to analyze the phenomenon, but their logic engines crashed, corrupted by data that described impossible geometries. "It's rewriting reality," one tech priest murmured before tearing out his own optical lenses. In the hives, chaos erupted. Pilgrims turned to panic. Some proclaimed the emperor had ascended, others screamed that he was dead. Riots spread, shrines were torn apart, icons burned. But amid the madness, something strange happened. Small groups began to gather in silence, not to worship, but to remember. They spoke of oceans, forests, and a blue sky. They claimed the earth itself had spoken to them in dreams. The ecclesiarchy called it heresy. The Inquisition called it infection. The people called it hope. In a deserted manufactorum, a former sister of battle sat among the ruins of her convent. Her name was Seraphine Vale, and she no longer wore her armor. The light of her faith had been her armor once, but now it was gone. In her trembling hands, she held the melted remains of her bolter. "If he is not our God," she whispered, "then what have we done in his name?" A sound came from the shadows, a soft, rhythmic beating. Not footsteps, a pulse, and with it, a voice low and sorrowful. "You have done only what was required to survive." She turned toward it, weaponless, and saw a figure made of light and dust, its face shifting between human and divine. "Who are you?" she asked. The figure smiled sadly. "A memory." On Mars, the Mechanicus convulsed. Without the Emperor's signal, the machine spirits went mad. Titans collapsed mid-step, plasma reactors exploded in temples of the Omnissiah. The Fabricator General transmitted a desperate plea to Terra. It was never received. Some claimed the machine god had revealed its true face, cold, merciless, and human. Others whispered that Mars was awakening something buried deep within its red heart. In the void, the warp roared like a wounded god. The psychic shockwave of the Astronomican's fall tore through reality, birthing storms and horrors unseen since the Horus heresy. Yet within that storm, something new began to emerge. A faint, flickering light, not golden but white, pure as a dying star. It pulsed in rhythm with the heartbeat of Terra itself. Back on the throne world, the High Lords convened for what might be the last time. The chamber was dark, lit only by dying candles. Panic dripped from every voice. "We must restore the throne," cried one. "We must reforge faith," screamed another. But the emissary of Guilliman stood silent until all had spoken. Then he said, "You do not understand. The Emperor's silence is not his death. It is his awakening." The others stared, aghast. "Awakening? You speak treason." The emissary removed his helm. His eyes glowed faintly with light that was not human. "He is remembering, and with him, the earth itself stirs." He placed a data shard on the table, an image of the throne, its machinery shifting, growing like a living organism. "The throne is not a tomb. It is a chrysalis." In the catacombs, the surviving custodes found Sergeant Calthus's body, or what was left of it. His armor was fused to the floor, his face serene, as though he had seen something beautiful before death. In his hand was a shard of metal engraved with words in ancient script. The custodian read them aloud. "The god you made is the man you feared to follow." The custodian took the shard to the surface, intending to deliver it to the High Lords. He never arrived. Witnesses said he turned to light before their eyes, dissolving into dust that drifted upward toward the palace. In the lower hives, something was happening to the people. Their dreams synchronized. They saw visions of the old earth, oceans roaring, winds screaming, mountains rising, and in those visions, they saw a figure walking across the land, barefoot, robed in light. Some called him the Emperor Reborn. Others said it was something else entirely, something older, purer. They began to chant his name, though none remembered learning it. Sol. Seraphine heard the name whispered in her dreams. She followed it through the shattered streets, past burning statues and rioting pilgrims, until she reached the edge of the palace walls. There, a new fissure had opened, exhaling warm air that smelled like rain. She wept at the scent, not knowing why. From that fissure came light, not golden, not holy, but alive. When she touched it, she saw visions, the Emperor in his mortal days, walking among the tribes of Terra, not as a god, but as a man who sought to unite humanity. She saw his sorrow as he was forced to become divine. She saw the moment he sat upon the throne, not as conqueror, but as prisoner, binding himself to save mankind from the storm he could no longer control. And she understood. The Emperor had not died. He had divided. His consciousness stretched across time, trapped within the machinery meant to preserve him. But as faith turned to worship, his prison grew stronger. Mankind's devotion was not his salvation, it was his cage. Seraphine fell to her knees, sobbing, "We caged our God in love." In the ruins of the basilica, Malkarian felt the same revelation burn through his soul. He saw the Emperor's final memory, a vision of humanity choosing faith over freedom. And in that choice, the seeds of eternal war were sown. "We were never his children," he murmured. "We were his dream." But dreams end. The fissures widened. Light erupted from beneath the palace, tearing through cathedrals and archives. The earth shook, not in destruction, but rebirth. From every continent a sound rose, the hum of something ancient awakening. Oceans long buried beneath the crust stirred. Air grew heavy with moisture. Rain fell for the first time in millennia. Billions looked up, feeling water on their faces, and for a heartbeat, they remembered. The throne world, once the dead heart of the Imperium, was breathing. But not all welcomed it. The Inquisition declared the event an abomination. The ecclesiarchy screamed that it was the work of chaos. Armies mobilized, tanks rolled through streets slick with sacred rain. Faith turned to fury. And amidst the chaos, a new war began, not against aliens or heretics, but against the truth itself. Seraphine led those who had seen the visions, the rememberers. They carried no weapons, only relics of the old world, soil, water, seeds. They said the Emperor's will was not conquest but restoration, that his true command had been forgotten. "He does not want thrones," Seraphine cried to the crowds. "He wants life." She was shot through the chest by a preacher moments later, but as she fell, her blood touched the ground, and the ground bloomed. Flowers, impossible and luminous, burst through the metal. The soldiers who saw it dropped their guns, trembling. Across Terra, miracles and atrocities intertwined. Priests burned heretics beside gardens that refused to die. Children born under the rain bore strange eyes, golden and gentle. The custodes stood divided, half swore to defend the palace, half to destroy it. In the High Lord's chamber, the emissary of Guilliman stood before a window, watching the world shift. "It begins," he said quietly. "The Emperor is no longer our god. He is becoming human again." Below, deep within the throne, machinery screamed. The Emperor's corpse flickered between light and flesh. Circuits liquefied into veins. The golden throne cracked apart, and beneath it, something vast and radiant stirred. A being neither man nor god, but both, shedding the armor of eternity like dead skin. Every mind on Terra felt his awakening, not as command, but as understanding. A voice without words whispered through them all, "Remember what you were." And then, everything changed. The light that emerged from the palace was not blinding, it was gentle. It spread across the planet, touching every living thing. Faith no longer burned. It remembered. The people saw not a god, but the truth. The Emperor had never ascended. He had been waiting for them to evolve, to stand without worship, to reclaim what humanity had lost. But as that realization spread, another presence awoke within the warp, a shadow that had been waiting since the beginning. For every memory rekindled, it grew stronger. It was not chaos. It was older. It was the void left by forgotten faith. The light and shadow met above Terra, entwining like lovers and enemies both. The sky split open. For the first time in millennia, the stars returned, cold, bright, watching. And from the heart of the palace came one final whisper, carried across the galaxy. I am awake, but not alone. The light that had reborn Terra did not bring peace. It brought revelation, and revelation is the cruelest kind of war. For a single day, the throne world shimmered with impossible beauty. Rain fell on rusted spires, rivers cut through metal plains, and flowers bloomed where ash once lay thick as bone dust. Billions lifted their eyes in awe, seeing color for the first time. Then the bombardments began. From orbit, loyalist fleets opened fire on their own planet. The decree came from Mars. Purge the blasphemy, burn the false dawn. Plasma and faith reigned together. Pilgrims burned as they sang. Entire hive sectors turned to glass beneath holy fire. The Imperial creed called it cleansing. But the screams of the dying were too human to sound divine. Seraphine Vale should have been dead. Yet she awoke beneath the ruins of the basilica, her wounds sealed by light. Around her, rememberers knelt in silence, their eyes reflecting the storm above. He's not gone, she whispered, though her voice trembled. He's becoming. They followed her, not as soldiers, but as witnesses to something no scripture could contain. In the upper atmosphere, Admiral Serac watched the bombardment from her command deck. She had given the order herself, as duty demanded. Now she could not stop seeing the faces of those below. Faith without mercy, she murmured, is only war pretending to be holy. Her navigator, eyes hollow, replied, and mercy without faith is treason. They both stared at the burning world and said nothing more. On the surface, the Custodes divided. The Auric Legion, the loyal, formed a golden wall around the remains of the palace. Those who had seen the light's truth broke ranks and vanished into the labyrinthine ruins. They no longer chanted the Emperor's name. They spoke of Sul, the awakening, the memory of man. For the first time in history, brothers in gold drew their blades against each other. The ecclesiarchy declared it the great apostasy reborn. Thousands of priests took to the streets calling for purgation. The sky filled with smoke and hymns. On the steps of the Basilica of the Blade Saints, Confessor General Malkarian faced the mob. He raised his staff and spoke through the roar, "If faith demands blindness, then I will go unseeing no longer." The crowd surged. His blood soaked the marble he once blessed. In the warp, the light of the Emperor's rebirth rippled like a wound. Psychers screamed as visions filled their minds, two shapes entwined in endless conflict, one of light, one of shadow. Neither evil, neither good, both born of the same source. The Astronomicon's corpse flickered again, briefly showing a constellation unseen for 10 millennia. Then the stars wept blood. The Inquisition's conclave met in secrecy beneath the mountains of Luna. Inquisitor Vane of the Ordo Hereticus slammed her gauntlet upon the table. We cannot allow this infection to spread. Terra is compromised. Her counterpart of the Ordo Malleus simply replied, "Then so is reality." Silence followed. For the first time, they all felt powerless. The emperor they served had become something they could no longer define. Deep within the palace, the throne's machinery groaned. The body that once sat upon it no longer did. In its place, The armor remained, empty, radiant, dripping molten gold. The air around it pulsed, breathing. Mechanicus adepts attempted to contain the energy, but their bodies turned to salt. The last words transmitted before the chambers sealed were, "He is not ascending, he is dividing." Seraphine led her followers through streets turned to ash. The sky burned red, the earth trembled, yet the air smelled of life. A child tugged at her arm, eyes wide with fear. "Why are they killing us?" he asked. She knelt and touched his face. "Because they've forgotten what they were protecting." Her voice was steady now. "But we remember." Across the planet, the rememberers spread. They whispered in the ruins, planting seeds in the cracks of metal. Where their blood spilled, green life grew. The ecclesiarchy branded them abominations. The guard hunted them like vermin. Yet no matter how many died, their words endured, carried in the rain. In orbit, Admiral Serac received a new order from Mars, Exterminatus. Her bridge fell silent. The command rune pulsed crimson. She could end everything with a single word. Her hand hovered over the activation sigil. "Forgive me," she said, not to her emperor, but to the world below. Then she lowered her hand. Order refused. The ship's crew stood in shock. Mutiny by mercy. The signal went out. Across the fleet, captains hesitated. Some obeyed Mars and fired. Others joined Serac in defiance. Battle erupted among the stars. The void filled with burning ships, their wreckage descending like meteors upon the throne world. Terra's skies wept fire once more. On the surface, the custodies loyal to the light of Sol marched toward the palace, led by a golden warrior whose armor bore cracks that glowed with inner flame. He spoke little, but his presence made men weep. "He calls to us," he said softly, "not as master, but as equal." Within the ruins of the throne room, a figure stirred in the radiant dust. It was neither corpse nor spirit. Its eyes opened, human, tired, infinite. The voice that emerged was a whisper that trembled the stars. "Mankind must walk again." The air vibrated, turning to heat, then song. The machinery of the throne dissolved into dust, but the light did not rise. It spread through metal, through flesh, through thought. Those who touched it saw themselves reflected not as worshippers, but as creators. Every act of devotion that once chained them now set them free. It was not salvation, it was choice. Yet choice is dangerous. The warp howled in response. The shadow awakened fully, its voice echoing across the Imperium like a memory unbound. "You cannot unmake what was made." Where the light brought remembrance, the shadow brought despair. The dead stirred in their tombs, whispering prayers in reverse. Planets screamed as reality bent. The custodes at the palace gates fell one by one, consumed by visions of eternity collapsing inward. Inquisitor Vane stood upon the steps, aiming her bolt pistol at the rising light. "I will not let it end in heresy," she said, and fired. The bullet turned to ash before reaching its mark. Her armor cracked open from within, and she saw, for one instant, the face of the Emperor, not divine, not wrathful, but sorrowful. Then she vanished in the light. The storm gathered. Seraphine stood at the edge of the crater that had been the palace, her followers around her, faces illuminated by the shifting glow that now rose from below. The rain had turned to gold. Each drop burned the skin, yet healed what it touched. Above, the void shimmered with fire as fleets tore each other apart. "What happens now?" someone asked. She looked toward the heart of the light, where something vast and unfinished was taking shape. "Now," she said, "we are judged." All across the throne world, the loyal and the lost stopped fighting. They turned their faces upward, to the sound of thunder unlike any storm of earth. It was the heartbeat of a god learning to be human. The fissures widened again. Light burst skyward, and within it forms began to emerge, armored figures made of flame, wings of molten glass, eyes like dying stars. They were not angels nor demons, but echoes, fragments of every soul that had ever believed. Their voices rose in a single question that shook the world. What are we if not faith? The light answered not in words, but in silence. A silence that filled the mind with unbearable truth. Humanity had never needed gods. It had only ever needed to remember itself. In the void above, Admiral Serak's ship burned, its engines crippled. She gazed down at the planet she could no longer recognize. "So this is the end of the Imperium," she whispered. Her dying Vox officer managed to smile. "No, Admiral, this is the beginning of man." On the surface, the storm reached its peak. Every sound became light, every light became thought. The world vibrated between creation and destruction. And then, stillness. For one impossible heartbeat, all of Terra stood silent. The rain froze mid-air. Fire hung motionless in the sky. The air held its breath. Even time seemed to hesitate, waiting for the next act of history to be written. Something vast was about to awaken, and the universe itself leaned closer to watch. The stillness did not last. It shattered like glass beneath the weight of 1,000 prayers. The sky tore open, revealing not stars, but wounds. Through them bled light, colorless and vast, pouring over Terra like a sea without mercy. The faithful fell to their knees, clutching relics that melted in their hands. The heretics lifted their faces to the heavens, smiling through tears. No one understood what they were seeing. No one could. The throne had become a sun. It pulsed with a rhythm older than creation. The air rippled with thought and memory. Around its base, the custodes and rememberers knelt together, their enemies forgotten, their faiths indistinguishable. Gold armor gleamed beside rags soaked in blood. All faces turned toward the same light. Seraphine walked into that glow. Her steps left trails of ash that bloomed into flowers. Her voice was barely a whisper, yet it carried across the ruins. "You were never sleeping, were you? You were listening." The wind answered, carrying 1,000 whispered names, saints, soldiers, and sinners. Every life ever given in his name now murmured back. The sound was not divine. It was human. Above, the fleets burned. The void was filled with drifting hulks, their lights dimming one by one. Admiral Serak watched from the shattered viewport of her dying vessel. Her uniform was torn, her hair singed, her eyes wide with awe and terror. "So this is how it ends," she said to no one. Her ship's machine spirit hummed, almost mournfully. "No," she corrected as she reached for the self-destruct runes. "This is how it begins." The explosion bloomed silently, a flower of fire against the dying stars. In the ruins below, inquisitorial banners smoldered in the dust. Survivors gathered amid the rubble, whispering fractured litanies. Some still prayed to the Emperor as a god. Others prayed to the memory of man. A few prayed to nothing at all. The schism had become something greater than heresy. It had become identity. Then, from the heart of the throne's light, a voice spoke, not aloud, but within. Each who heard it felt it differently, a mother's lullaby, a general's last order, a lover's goodbye. But its message was the same. "I am not your God. I am your consequence." The words rippled through the warp. Every psyker in the galaxy screamed at once. Across 1,000 worlds, shrines cracked, statues wept blood, and holy texts turned blank. The truth was too vast for belief to contain. Faith itself buckled under its own weight. Seraphine fell to her knees. Tears cut tracks through the soot on her face. "Then why save us?" she asked. The light pulsed once like a heartbeat. "Because you remembered me even when you should not have." She understood then. The Emperor had not died to preserve divinity. He had endured to preserve humanity's reflection, its capacity to choose light even in darkness. The custodian who once guarded the throne approached her. His golden armor was cracked, his voice raw. "If he is no god, then what are we sworn to?" She looked up at him, her expression weary but unbroken. "To the same thing we were always sworn to, each other." A rumble tore through the palace grounds. The throne's foundations split. From the cracks rose streams of light, twisting skyward. They carried shapes, faces, silhouettes, echoes of all who had ever died in his service. It was a river of souls, flowing upward into eternity. Some reached out to touch it and vanished in peace. Others recoiled, afraid of what freedom meant. Far below the surface, within the forgotten catacombs of old Earth, Mechanicus adepts witnessed their sensors ignite. "The throne's power grid is reversing," one stammered. "It's not consuming life, it's releasing it." They watched in awe as the reactors fell silent for the first time in 10,000 years. The golden throne was dying, but Terra was breathing again. In the spires above, the storm broke. Lightning carved the sky into veins of light. The rain returned, golden and heavy. It fell on corpses and living alike, washing the blood into shimmering rivers. The scent of ozone and incense filled the air, and in that rain, something impossible occurred. The dead began to sing, not with voices, but with resonance. The metal around them vibrated with sound, low and sorrowful. The echoes formed words that none could fully comprehend. It was a requiem for a god who had chosen to become mortal again. Every sound carried both mourning and hope. The Inquisition, broken and leaderless, made one last attempt to restore order. Vane's successor, young, frightened, resolute, stood before the survivors. "The Imperium stands," she declared, though her voice trembled. "It must." Her words met silence. None obeyed. None defied. They simply watched the light consuming the horizon. The Age of Orders was ending. The warp storms that had long encircled Terra began to fade. In their place came clarity. For the first time in living memory, the stars shone unshrouded. Ships that had been lost for centuries reappeared in orbit, their crews weeping in disbelief. Astropaths reported visions of vast fields of calm within the Imperium, a silence where the Emperor's voice had once screamed. But silence can be both peace and warning. As the world adjusted to the miracle, another presence stirred beneath the throne, something ancient and forgotten, bound long before the age of the Imperium. The light had burned away its prison. Now it breathed, and the whisper that escaped was older than faith itself. "At last," it sighed, "we remember each other." The custodian raised his blade, golden fire dancing along its edge. "What is that?" Seraphine asked. His face was pale. "Not a demon," he said. "Something deeper." The ground shook as the light dimmed, revealing a silhouette rising from the abyss, vast, luminous, half-human, half-shadow. It looked like the Emperor, and it did not. The two halves, the Ascendant and the Fallen, faced one another in silence. Between them stretched the memory of all humanity's sins. Then the voice came again, split in two. "You made me your savior. You made me your tyrant. Which do you want me to be?" The answer came not from priests or soldiers, but from the child who once asked Seraphine why the world killed its own. He stepped forward, his face glowing with reflected fire. "Be neither," he said. "Just be one of us." The world held its breath. The two forms stared at him, then at each other. Slowly they began to merge. The light turned crimson, then white, then nothing at all. The throne shattered in a soundless quake, and all that was left was a figure, human, weary, alive. The Emperor stood, not radiant, not divine. Flesh and blood, scarred by millennia, his armor gone, his eyes full of sorrow and quiet strength. He looked at the millions kneeling before him and said nothing. Only a tear rolled down his cheek. It fell to the ground and turned to light. All around, people wept, some in joy, some in terror. The Imperium's God had returned as a man. The faith that bound the galaxy had just undone itself. He stepped forward, bare feet on broken marble. The custodes lowered their weapons. Seraphine bowed her head. "What now, my lord?" she asked. His voice was soft, almost human again. "Now," he said, "you live without me." The light began to fade. The sky dimmed to gray. The rain slowed. What was once holy now looked simply mortal. The wars, the devotion, the endless sacrifice, all of it had led to this quiet, fragile moment. And in that silence, the Imperium felt something it had not known in 10,000 years. Freedom. But freedom is never without fear. Across the horizon, beyond the glow of rebirth, shadows gathered once more. The warp had not vanished. It waited, watching. In its depths, the dark reflection of mankind stirred. And somewhere, in that endless void, a whisper laughed, a sound neither divine nor damned, but familiar. The story of faith was not over, it was beginning again. And this time, the Emperor would walk among them, not as God, but as consequence. The light faded to black. The echoes fell silent. The last image burned into the ruins of Terra was of a man standing beneath a broken sky, looking up, not toward heaven, but toward humanity itself. The age of gods had ended. The age of man had begun. The light that once crowned Terra was gone. In its place, a pale dawn stretched across the world like the slow breath of something wounded but alive. The air was heavy with the scent of ozone and ashes. The storms had passed, yet the silence they left behind was not peace. It was memory. The throne no longer stood. Its remains lay scattered across the ruins of the imperial palace like the bones of an age that refused to rest. The marble was cracked, the golden eagles half buried beneath soil that had never known sunlight. For the first time in 10,000 years, Earth was quiet. And in that quiet, life began to stir. Grass grew in the shadows of shattered cathedrals. Rivers of melted gold cooled into veins of metal beneath the soil. The ruins breathed. People walked among them, dazed and reverent, as if afraid to disturb the ghosts of their own salvation. Some still whispered prayers, though no one answered. Others simply listened to the wind, the rustle of leaves, the steady heartbeat of a world relearning what it meant to live. The Emperor, the man, no longer God, had vanished. Some said he walked among the stars once more. Others claimed he dissolved into the light itself. None knew for certain. Only the mark of his presence remained, the warmth that lingered in the air, the sense that the world had been seen, understood, and forgiven. Seraphine Vale stood where the throne once was. The years had not touched her, though her eyes held centuries of sorrow. Around her gathered the few who survived, the rememberers, the custodes, and those too stubborn to die. They spoke little. There was nothing left to say. The age of certainty had ended. In its place came choice, fragile and vast. The custodian knelt before her, his armor dulled and scarred. "Was it worth it?" he asked, his voice hoarse, almost human. She looked to the horizon where the dawn light met the ruins of the city. "I don't know," she said, "but it was necessary." They buried the banners in the dust, one by one, the Aquila, the sigil of Mars, the broken seal of the Inquisition. Each fell into the earth like a confession. The soil drank their symbols without judgment. Above them, the first true sky in 10 millennia opened, gray, imperfect, infinite. In orbit, the wreckage of 1,000 ships drifted, forming a ring of light around the planet. The remnants of the fleets that once ruled the stars now circled their birthplace like a crown of ghosts. The void was silent. The Astronomicon was gone. For the first time since the heresy, the galaxy was blind. Yet somehow ships still launched. They followed instinct, not orders, hope, not command. Children played among the ruins of the ecclesiarchy's great halls. They climbed the fallen statues, carved their names into stone once worshipped as holy. The echoes of laughter replaced the hymns that once drowned the screams. And when they asked who the emperor was, the elders smiled faintly and said, "He was someone who remembered us when we forgot ourselves." Far below the surface, deep within the catacombs of the throne world, the last Mechanicus adepts recorded what they could. Data, fragments, prayers encoded in light. The knowledge of the Imperium was fading, but they preserved what mattered, the stories. For even machines, they had learned, must one day speak not in logic but in remembrance. The warp had grown still, though not silent. Psychers no longer heard the Emperor's voice. They heard only whispers, the murmur of countless minds rediscovering their own strength. The Imperium reflected them now as it always had, every fear, every dream, every unspoken desire. Humanity's gods had fallen, but its shadow remained eternal. On the fields where armies once died for belief, new cities rose, not of marble but of wood, stone, and purpose. No one ruled them. Councils gathered, argued, rebuilt. There were no edicts, no holy decrees, only fragile cooperation. It was imperfect, flawed, human, and it endured. The custodes disbanded. Some wandered the stars in silent pilgrimage. Others laid down their weapons and became teachers, guardians of memory rather than thrones. Their golden armor rusted in the open air, each dent a story of loyalty and doubt. To see a custodian plow a field or tend to children was a sight both humbling and sacred. Seraphine spent her final days writing. Her words were not scripture but recollection, a record of what it meant to believe in something greater than oneself and what it cost. She wrote of fire and faith, of blindness and awakening, of how salvation once sought in the divine was found instead in the human. When she died, they buried her beneath the ruins of the Basilica of Light, her final manuscript sealed in crystal. Its last words were simple. The Emperor did not ascend. He remembered. Centuries passed. Empires rose again, smaller, humbler, less certain. The memory of the Imperium became myth. The god who was man became legend. His name was spoken in stories around campfires, his image painted not on banners of war, but on the walls of homes. To some, he was the savior who gave everything. To others, the tyrant who finally let go. But somewhere, beyond the edges of the dying galaxy, in the silence between stars, something still listened. The echo of a heartbeat, the last remnant of the throne's song, resonated faintly through the void. It was neither command nor prayer. It was simply presence. A remembrancer of the new dawn recorded the story in his chronicle. His quill moved slowly, reverently, as if afraid to disturb the weight of history. His chamber was small, lit only by the faint glow of a relic candle. Each word felt heavier than the last. He wrote of the old earth, the world of gods and ghosts, of golden lies and broken faith. He wrote of the day humanity learned that the divine was not something to serve, but something to outgrow. He wrote until his hands trembled, until the ink dried on the page. Then he looked out the window, at a sky still scarred by memory. And he wondered, when mankind ceases to worship, does it lose its soul, or does it finally reclaim it? When gods die, does faith end, or does it return home, into the hearts of those who dreamed them into being? He did not answer. Some questions are not meant to be. He set down his pen and closed the tome. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of rain, the same golden rain that once burned the world clean. The candle flickered once, then went out. The silence that followed was not emptiness. It was peace. The stars above Terra burned faintly, no longer screaming through the veil of the warp. They were simply stars again, mute, indifferent, eternal. And among them, a faint light moved, a single vessel drifting outward toward the unknown. Its engines glowed like a heartbeat, steady, fragile, human. Perhaps the Emperor walked there among the lost and the searching. Or perhaps he was gone at last, content to let his children find their own way. The chronicles end here. The ink fades. The stone crumbles. But the story remains. In every heart that still remembers the taste of hope amid ruin, the echo of his final act endures. Not salvation, not victory, memory. For memory is the truest immortality, the quiet defiance of those who refuse to be forgotten. And so, as the stars grow dim and the ages turn, one truth remains. Humanity endures not because it was led by gods, but because it learned to rise without them. The Imperium is gone. The Emperor sleeps. But the story continues. And somewhere, beneath a sky reborn, a child looks up at the dawn and whispers a name that no longer binds, but remembers. So ends the age of gods. So begins the age of man. If this story moved you, if the echoes of this fallen empire linger in your thoughts, like, subscribe, and share. Leave a comment below and let your voice join the remembrance. The Imperium may fade, but stories endure forever.